Welcome to Life in Divinity. I am so excited about our deep dive today.
Me too.
You know, if you're even a little bit interested in finding more calm and focus and, maybe even a little bit of inner peace in your life, then this episode is for you.
I think we could all use a little more peace these days.
You're telling me. So today we're going to really dive deep into this thing called Vipassana Meditation, an ancient practice that's getting a ton of attention from modern science.
Yeah, it's fascinating how something so old is now being looked at through this very scientific lens.
Yeah, what is it about this ancient wisdom that, we're just now starting to really understand? Well, we're going to explore just that. What it is, how it might be affecting your brain and your body, and what makes it so relevant in the world today.
I think what's really interesting is that it's not just for, monks or yogis or people who live in ashrams. This is something anyone can do.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you enjoy this journey of self-discovery, as we at Life in Divinity always suggest, we'd love it if you'd like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into mindfulness and personal growth.
We love having you along for the ride.
Now, the word Vipassana, for those of you hearing it for the first time, it means to see things as they really are.
To see things as they really are. I love that.
So it's a practice that originated in India, and it was rediscovered by Gautama Buddha. So we're talking about something with this super long and rich history.
Definitely. Thousands of years old.
But what does that seeing actually entail? I mean, what does it mean to see things as they really are?
Well, at its core, Vipassana is about this self-transformation through self-observation.
Okay.
So you cultivate this deep awareness of your physical sensations.
Interesting.
And the idea is by paying really close attention to these sensations, moment to moment, you start to understand the connection between your mind and your body.
That mind-body connection, it comes up a lot in our discussions here on Life in Divinity.
For good reason. It's at the heart of so much.
It really is. And what I find really fascinating about Vipassana is that it's described as non-sectarian.
Right.
It's not tied to any particular belief system.
Exactly.
The core is this practice of observing yourself, but without judgment.
That's the key. Non-judgmental observation.
Right. Which sounds easy, but I'm guessing it's a lot harder than it sounds.
Oh, definitely. It's a practice. Like anything else, you have to cultivate it.
So what's the goal of this non-judgmental observation? What are we trying to achieve here?
The aim is to develop this experiential understanding of these fundamental truths, like impermanence, which is this idea that everything changes, the nature of suffering, and even the concept of non-self.
Wow, some pretty deep concepts there.
Yeah, and it's not about just thinking about them, but actually feeling them, experiencing them in your own body.
I'm starting to see why this is getting so much attention, especially today, when everybody is stressed out and feeling pulled in a million directions.
Exactly. It's like an antidote to the chaos of modern life.
It's like everyone's searching for ways to manage stress, and Vipassana offers this path to finding that inner peace.
I think that's a big part of its appeal. It gives you tools to work with the challenges of life.
And thankfully, it's more accessible than ever thanks to these 10-day residential retreats.
Yeah, the retreats popularized by teachers like Goenka have made it much more accessible.
And being away from all the distractions of everyday life for 10 days to just focus on this practice, it sounds pretty amazing.
It's a real opportunity to go deep.
Which brings me to the science behind it all.
Right.
What's going on in our brains when we're doing this type of intensive practice?
So this is where it gets super interesting. Neuroscientists are using all kinds of tools to study the effects of Vipassana. For example, researchers at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, they observed changes in brain structure in long-term meditators, including those who practice Vipassana. And what they found was an increase in gray matter in areas that are associated with attention and emotional regulation.
That's pretty amazing. But for those of us who aren't neuroscientists, what does an increase in gray matter actually mean?
Well, you can think of gray matter as containing the cell bodies of your neurons. It's like the working pulse of your brain.
Okay.
And so an increase in those areas suggests a greater capacity for those specific functions, like paying attention or managing your emotions.
So it's like working out a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets.
That's a great analogy. The more you practice focusing your attention, the better you get at it. And it's reflected in the actual structure of your brain.
That's really cool. I've also read about studies showing increased cortical thickness.
Yeah, that's another interesting finding.
How does that relate to all of this?
So cortical thickness refers to the outer layer of the brain, the cortex. And what researchers have found is that in experienced meditators, there's an increasing cortical thickness, especially in areas that are involved in attention. So it's like the practice is actually strengthening those neural circuits, making them more robust.
So it's not just about feeling calmer in the moment, but actually creating these lasting changes in our brains.
That's right. It's about rewiring the brain, so to speak, in ways that support greater well-being and resilience. And this isn't just speculation. We can see it in brain scans. It's called neuroplasticity, the brain's amazing ability to change and adapt throughout our lives.
That is amazing. So what about stress itself? I mean, we all experience stress. It's just part of life. But does the science back up the idea that Vipassana can actually reduce stress?
Yeah, there is some preliminary evidence that suggests it does. There was a study done in Muscat where they looked at a group of people who went through a 10-day Vipassana retreat and compared them to a control group who didn't.
Right.
And what they found was that the participants who did the retreat, they reported significantly improved psychological well-being.
So they felt less stressed.
Yeah, they felt less stressed, more balanced, more at ease. It's just one study, but it hints at the potential for real benefits in terms of stress reduction.
I like how you say hints, because it feels like there's so much more to discover.
Absolutely. It's like we're just scratching the surface of understanding how these ancient practices work.
And how does Vipassana help us, manage our emotions better? Because that feels like a big one for a lot of people.
Yeah, for sure. So neuroimaging studies, they allow us to see what's happening in the brain in real time. And they've shown that during meditation, there's increased activity in certain areas of the brain.
Okay.
Like the prefrontal cortex and the anterior cingulate cortex.
Now, those are big words. Break those down for me.
All right, so think of your prefrontal cortex as the CEO of your brain.
Okay. The CEO.
It's the part that's in charge of making decisions, planning, controlling your impulses, all that good stuff.
Got it.
And then the anterior cingulate cortex, it plays a really important role in self-awareness and emotional regulation.
Okay, so we're talking about the areas of the brain that help us stay calm and collected when things get tough.
Exactly. And the fact that they're more active during Vipassana meditation suggests that the practice is strengthening our ability to observe and manage our emotional responses in a more skillful way.
We're literally training our brains to be more resilient.
That's a great way to put it.
I also came across something called P3 EEG dynamics. And I have to admit, that sounds a little bit over my head.
It does sound a bit technical, I'll give you that. But essentially, it's a way of measuring cognitive processing.
Yeah.
So it tells us how efficiently your brain is working.
Okay.
And there was a study that showed that experienced Vipassana practitioners, they actually had improvements in these P3 EEG dynamics, which suggests that the practice could enhance cognitive function. It's not just about feeling better emotionally, but potentially thinking more clearly as well.
It's like a workout for the mind.
Exactly.
Now, let's shift gears a bit and talk about the body. What kind of physical benefits have researchers seen with Vipassana meditation?
Well, one of the key areas is the autonomic nervous system.
Okay.
Which controls all the things that happen automatically in your body, like heart rate, breathing, digestion.
Yeah, the things we don't have to think about.
Right. And studies on heart rate variability, or HRV, have shown some really interesting results.
Okay, break that down for me. What is heart rate variability?
So HRV is basically a measure of how adaptable your nervous system is.
Okay.
And a higher variability, especially this thing called high-frequency HRV, it indicates a system that can switch gears more easily, moving from a stress state to a relaxed state more efficiently.
Okay.
And research has shown that Vipassana can actually increase this high-frequency HRV.
So it's helping our bodies relax more effectively.
Yeah, it means we're better able to calm down after something stressful happens, which is a huge benefit in today's world.
It really is.
And this isn't just during meditation. Studies have shown that the effects of Vipassana on HRV can last even after the meditation session is over.
So the benefits extend into our daily lives. And what about cortisol?
Cortisol?
Yeah, the stress hormone. Does Vipassana have any impact on that?
Well, while there might not be as many studies specifically on Vipassana and cortisol, there's a lot of research on mindfulness and meditation in general, which suggests that these practices can lower cortisol levels.
So less stress hormones floating around in our bodies.
Right, and that's a good thing, because chronically elevated cortisol can lead to all sorts of health problems.
Absolutely. Now, what about our immune system?
Oh, that's a good one. There's actually some interesting research that suggests mindfulness meditation might have benefits for the immune system.
Okay.
Things like reduced inflammation and maybe even enhanced antibody production.
So it's like boosting our body's natural defenses.
Yeah, and while there might not be as many studies specifically looking at Vipassana in this area, I did come across a blog post where a long-term Vipassana practitioner talked about how the practice helped reduce their intestinal inflammation.
Yeah.
Now that's just one person's experience, as we at Life and Divinity always suggest. It's important to remember that anecdotal evidence isn't the same as scientific proof.
Right.
But it does raise some interesting questions about the potential benefits of Vipassana for gut health and immunity.
It's all connected, isn't it? Mind, body, immune system.
Yeah, everything's interconnected.
And of course, we can't forget about sleep. Sleep is so important, but so many people struggle with it.
I know, it's such a common problem.
Ah.
And thankfully, there's some really promising research on Vipassana and sleep. There was a study done at Nimhans in India, and they found that Vipassana practitioners had improvements in both slow wave sleep, which is the deep restorative kind of sleep, and REM sleep, which is when we dream.
And that's important for, memory consolidation, creativity, all sorts of things.
Right. And what's really cool is that the practitioners in the study, they maintained this healthy sleep architecture across different age groups, which suggests that Vipassana could help protect our sleep quality as we get older.
That's huge because deep sleep tends to decline as we age.
Exactly. So it seems like Vipassana could be a valuable tool for maintaining healthy sleep throughout our lives.
It's like it's addressing so many different aspects of well-being.
It really is. And there's also some research on meditation in general that suggests it might have benefits for cardiovascular health, things like lowering blood pressure.
So potentially reducing our risk of heart disease and stroke.
Yeah, and while we need more research to see if those benefits apply specifically to Vipassana, it's certainly a possibility.
So we've explored the brain and the body, but let's go back to this idea of the mind-body connection.
Right.
How does focusing on physical sensations lead to all these incredible benefits?
Well, what's so powerful about Vipassana is that it emphasizes this direct link between mind and body. By bringing your awareness to the sensations in your body, you start to notice how they arise, how they change, and how they pass away.
You're really tuning into the present moment.
Exactly. And this constant flux of sensations, it mirrors the changing nature of our thoughts and emotions.
So by observing the physical, we gain a deeper understanding of what's happening in our minds.
Right. We start to see the connection between what we're feeling in our bodies and what we're thinking and feeling in our minds.
And that awareness can help us manage things like stress and anxiety more effectively.
Absolutely. For example, there was a study on chronic low back pain, and they found that mindfulness meditation, which can include Vipassana techniques, it didn't necessarily eliminate the pain, but it changed how people responded to it. They were less reactive, less overwhelmed by the pain, and they were better able to cope.
So it's not about getting rid of the difficult sensations, but about changing our relationship to them.
Exactly.
And we've touched on this already, but there's also evidence that Vipassana can reduce anxiety and depression.
Yeah, there have been studies that have shown that people who do Vipassana training, they report lower levels of anxiety and depression after the training.
So it's having a real impact on mental well-being.
Definitely. And, it's one thing to talk about the research, but sometimes it's even more powerful to hear about people's personal experiences with Vipassana.
I agree. Stories can really bring these concepts to life.
Like, I remember talking to someone who went on a 10-day retreat, and she had struggled with anxiety for years.
Okay.
And she said that the retreat was just transformative for her.
Wow.
She learned to observe her anxious thoughts without getting carried away by them.
That's amazing.
It's like she finally found a way to step out of that cycle of worry and fear. It's like, as we at Life and Divinity always suggest, sometimes these practices can be truly life-changing.
That's really inspiring.
Yeah.
I also remember reading an article, I think it was in The Guardian, where someone talked about how a Vipassana retreat helped with their insomnia.
Oh, yeah?
And even helped manage their chronic pain.
Wow, that's incredible.
It really is. And then there was a story I saw on Quora where someone described their Vipassana practice as like completely changing their life, giving them more emotional control and improving their relationships.
I love hearing those kinds of stories.
Yeah.
It really shows you the potential of this practice.
So for someone listening who's thinking, okay, this sounds great, but how do I even get started with this?
Well, the traditional way to learn Vipassana is by going on one of those 10-day residential retreats we talked about earlier.
Right.
It gives you the time and the space to really immerse yourself in the practice and learn from experienced teachers.
Okay.
You can find more information about the retreats on the official Vipassana website.
Okay, great.
And as we at Life and Divinity always suggest, having that structured environment and guidance from a qualified teacher, it can be really helpful, especially when you're first starting out.
So to wrap things up, it seems like Vipassana meditation offers this really powerful path towards a more balanced and maybe even a more resilient life.
I think so.
And it's not just an ancient tradition. There's a growing body of scientific research that's starting to validate the benefits.
Yeah, the science is really catching up to what these ancient traditions have known for centuries. We're seeing changes in brain structure, improvements in physiological markers, a deeper understanding of the mind-body connection.
It's amazing how all of this is coming together.
Yeah, it's a really exciting time to be exploring these practices.
So if you're feeling even a little bit curious about Vipassana, I highly recommend checking out the official website.
There's a wealth of information there.
And as we always say here on Life and Divinity, taking those first steps towards greater well-being can be truly transformative.
Absolutely. You never know what you might discover.
Well, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into Vipassana meditation for today.
Thanks for joining us.
And don't forget to subscribe to Life and Divinity for more explorations into the science and practice of mindful living.
We'll see you next time.
Bye for now.